Of course, we'd all like to believe that offenders are properly rehabilitated before being released. Well, that is how it should ordinarily work. It seems it's not always the case. Back in 2008, Krugersdorp Samurai Killer may be free, but still a danger to society. It's all these years later, Barry Bateman, and you've been following the story so very, very closely as well. We now come forward to 2022, and despite speaking to Dr. Gerard Labuschagne, one of the people who a while ago recommended that he not be released, he is a free man.
Indeed. Cast your mind back to 2008. We had this Morne Harmsa, 18 years old at the time. He went into his school with a samurai sword, and he put on a mask inspired by his favorite band at the time, which was Slipknot. Their whole spiel was wearing these scary-looking masks on stage as they performed their music. He put this on, and it was a plan that they'd hatched, him and his friends, that they were going to do this attack on the school. But everyone else pulled out, and probably not taking it too seriously. But he arrived with these. And using the sword, he slashed at Jacques Pretorius, hitting him in the neck. He died on the scene. He attacked two more workers at the school, injuring them, and then attacking another pupil as well. So he was charged with a charge of murder, found guilty of murder, and 3 counts of attempted murder. And he's been in prison ever since. And
it's not been smooth sailing for him in prison either as well. Released on parole, but as I mentioned to Dr. Labuschagne, concerns in prison. And despite all of that, Barry, he's still been released. But what were some of those concerns? Not a good time in prison for him.
No, it hasn't been. So there was a 2019 assessment at his first parole hearing which looked at his prison history as an offender, but his current state. And what it has found is that his mental health has deteriorated since his incarceration in 2019, was the year after the actual crime. In 2015, he was diagnosed with a very serious psychiatric condition. He presents with hallucinations and delusions. He's prone to self-harm and violence, so he's been involved in numerous fights with other offenders. He's had his prison status, because you get different levels which relate to your whether you can get certain luxuries, if you want to call it that. That has been changed up and down over the years. So he's had a very difficult period in prison. When it came to this assessment in 2019, having looked at this, psychiatrists and psychologists found that he's not a suitable candidate. He remains a risk to himself. He remains a risk to the public in general. The psychiatric diagnosis that he's dealing with requires very the treatment is very difficult. You need to maintain your medication and so on. So he's not a suitable candidate to be released, despite this. And I've heard from sources, and this I've confirmed it with sources, that 2019 assessment has not changed to the assessment that was done a couple of weeks ago. And despite this, he was still released. And
I can't help but wonder then, so the parole board, and I want to be flippant about this, disregarding what I'm sure is multiple psychological and medical reports on this. Any idea why they've done this? I'm sure you've spoken to them.
Yeah, I've spoken to correctional services, and the response from them is firstly, they do not deny it. They have not denied. I put the question very straightforward to the spokesperson, saying this is what the report has found. Did you disregard this? I didn't get the clear answer, but the suggestion is very clear, quite clearly there. And their response is that you cannot focus in on just one report. You're dealing with a host of other reports. But it follows then, given the nature of the crime and the findings by the psychologists and the psychiatrists, very serious findings which relate to the public health, public good, the danger to the public. But on that question, why did you disregard it? I spoke to the DCS spokesperson, and he had this to say.
When an offender is considered for parole placement, there is a number of factors that you look at. There is a report from case management committee. There is a report from the unit manager. There is a report from the social worker, or social workers for that matter, from psychologists, the medical unit, case intervention officers, and integration office. So all of this is then taken into consideration. You cannot then pull one report, let's say, out of 8 and say, because of this one, we cannot place this person on parole. But you need to look at all those points raised vis-a-vis what has been stated there, and are there any mitigating factors or means that could then be placed as means of assisting that particular inmate so that you start with the process of reintegrating this person, because we wouldn't want a situation where a person stays in our care until the sentence expires, when there is an opportunity that this person could be assisted to start reintegrating before the sentence expires.
All right, so Barry Bateman, despite all the issues, and I don't mean to be flippant, but despite all the early parole, the medical reports, the psychology reports saying he is fit to be released to the general public in South Africa, despite all the concerns, we can't forget how the family of the victims must feel about this.
Yeah, I had a sit-down with Leonie Pretorius, which is Jacques Pretorius, the deceased boy's aunt. The family played a role in the parole hearings only in 2019, so it was just one occasion. They were informed by an email 2 weeks ago that Morne Harmse would be released, and it's come as a complete shock. They too are concerned about the offender's mental health. Leonie took me back to when they sat in this particular hearing. The offender is blank in terms of his emotions. He shows no emotion whatsoever. He didn't look at the family. They believe he hasn't showed any remorse, nor has he taken responsibility for what he has done. So they're shocked, they're disappointed that this decision has been made to release him, but they're concerned that this offender might reoffend.
Well, based on the reports, it looks like it. Barry, just very briefly before I say goodbye to you, people are going to be asking, okay, Barry, but what now? What is Barry Bateman going to do? How do we try and take this story forward? It can't be a case of being let out of prison, a danger to society, it seems, and we just forget about the story.
Well, we're certainly going to keep a very close eye on it, but what we're going to be looking at through today and tomorrow is the parole process itself. Let's get a deeper understanding. You've speaking to Gerard Labuschagne earlier. He's raised some concerns about the transparency of it. We're going to be speaking to other experts as well. But that important role of the family, why was the family not brought in for part of the later assessments for Morne Harmse? And we're going to look at that particular aspect, the victim family or the victims themselves, their involvement in parole. Yeah,
Barry Bateman with the exclusive on the Krugersdorp Samurai Killer. You can look out for a lot more research and investigative work by Barry Bateman. Barry, thank you for coming in.